Welcome to the Freedom Founder Podcast, the show that provides a platform for self-made entrepreneurs to share their stories on how they got where they are today. If you're a budding entrepreneur or a business owner looking for further inspiration, education, or motivation, then look no further. This is the show for you. And now, let's get started with your host, Zach Duggar.
Welcome to the Freedom Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Duggar. Now, if you are an expert in your field and you're looking to expand your brand and find new ways to communicate your message to others, a book might be in your future. And my guest today can help you with that. And that's a topic that she has found to be engaging and inspiring for herself and also for others to be a part of that process. So Nancy Erickson, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Zach. I'm really pleased to be here.
Absolutely. Now, I love to start these conversations getting a little bit of background and finding out, where you came from to get to where you are today. And I know that what you're doing now isn't what you were doing a number of years ago. So tell us a little bit about your professional career that you were involved in and get to that point of where you started to think of, well, something else is needing to change. So I'm interested in doing something different.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because people often ask me, how did you get into helping coach people to write and to be a publisher? Yeah. Like my answer is well, sideways. So what happened was my original career was in high tech. And when I graduated from college, I was a systems engineer for IBM. And then I worked for Oracle Corporation. And it must have been 2006, my dad was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor. And we knew he would only live about 7 months. So I quit everything. And my parents were living in Florida. So I went down there to be with them during that time. And for a little bit after my dad passed away, to be with my mom as she kind of made that transition. And when I came back home, it was like, oh, now what am I going to do? I quit my job. So, and instead of having this panic feeling of what am I going to do now? It was more like, I can do anything I want. And so I had always loved to write. And when I was younger, I had some things published. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to hone those writing skills while I figure out what I want to do. And I was looking through undergraduate courses and I'm like, well, I've already taken all those. So I ended up going back to school to get a master's degree in writing. And that was a 2-year program. And I was really drawn to nonfiction. Of course, you have to take a lot of different courses like poetry and fiction writing and things like that. But I was really, really drawn to nonfiction because I thought people are more interesting than the made up world. And so when I graduated, a couple of things happened at the same time. Number one, I started my nonfiction publishing house, which is Stonebrook Publishing, where we publish what we call high impact nonfiction books. And those are books that will either save lives, change lives, or transform society. But at the same time, they asked me to join the faculty to teach writing at the university where I graduated. So I was teaching writing at the same time. And that's kind of one of the advantages of when you're the oldest person in the graduating class, because I went back as an adult and there are a lot of other much younger people in our program. But and so here I was, I wanted to publish books. And the first book that we published had been written by a Holocaust survivor who went to school with Anne Frank. And we ended up doing that book release at their school in Amsterdam. And that was a kind of a surreal experience. It was just really moving. They had a big ceremony at the school for the 170 children that the Nazis had murdered from the school. Of course, it was all in Dutch, so I didn't understand it, but I got the emotion of it. And then across the street, we went to the bookstore and did the book release. Then the second book we published, we ended up getting back cover endorsements from Sir Paul McCartney and Cindy Crawford. And I was like, what? This is I must really know what I'm doing. They wouldn't lend their name to something if we weren't really good at what we do. But here was the problem, Zach. And we were getting so many manuscripts that had, I would say, a seed of what we really wanted to do, which is to have create these high impact books. But they were so poorly written that we couldn't publish them, and we couldn't even edit our way out of these books. So, and yet I still felt like I felt a responsibility toward the author, because they had a message that they wanted to get out into the world, but it just wasn't something we could work with. So I took a step back for about a year and didn't publish anything else. And during that time, I created this step by step process that takes you from your idea all the way to planning your book, to writing it, to editing, to publishing, and to having it distributed worldwide. So it's kind of like the thing that really drew me to nonfiction in the first place is that we have so many problems in our world that it's almost hard to name them, much less solve them. But I truly believe that the answers are trapped in people like your listeners, and that when you simply tell your story, what you know, what you've gleaned, what you've developed, what you've accomplished in your business, what you've overcome, then you become the source of two things that people can't live without. And those two things are hope and help. And so what we're trying to do, and what we actually do, is we take people who aren't professional writers. I mean, sure, everybody's written stuff before, but we take you through this process so that you can develop a professionally published product that will not only get your message out, but to help you to expand your business.
I love that. And going back to what you just said, hope and help that comes out of that message that's conveyed in the book that someone has written. Now that someone has that information that they can convey in a format that's digestible and that others can access readily, because we can't be present everywhere all at once. And not that everyone wants to hear our message, but
they
those
might.
that do.
Right. Yeah. Well, so that's
Exactly.
the thing. If you want a bigger audience, you need a bigger platform. And when you work with us, that the book is the beginning of that, but it isn't the end of it, because of the way that we construct your chapters, which we build those in problem solution sets, so that every chapter is solving a distinct problem. Mm-hmm. When you're finished, you should be able to take every one of those chapters and repurpose that material to create other revenue producing products. And those are things like, keynote speeches or workshops or seminars, or, maybe you want to start your own podcast, or online training, video courses, those types of things. So it's the beginning of something, because everybody's not going to read your book. Everybody who's in your audience isn't going to read your book, but that doesn't mean that you can't just reach that audience where they're already engaged.
Yeah, that's a great way to be able to help someone, and not just writing that book, but to think about it in segmented process, that they can take that content and further explore other ways to get that information out there. Just like you described, webinars, trainings, keynote speeches, podcast. I'm sure a plethora of other ideas that someone can do.
Well, that's the whole idea, is like you develop this one basic product, and then you expand off of that, and you repurpose your intellectual property into other products.
Yeah. Now, do you feel like this still hits that goal, the original goal at the publishing house, those high impact books?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because, we do a lot of business books, and in your audience is certainly in that category. And, but when you talk about your business and what you developed, and maybe you're an entrepreneur and you've been successful at that, there's a lot of people who are at the early stage of that and are looking for inspiration and hope and help in your book. So yes, every book that we publish definitely fits that. But your book should actually do 3 things for you. It should increase your credibility. It should establish you as an expert in your field and help attract a following. But it's only going to do those things for you if it's really well done. So we concentrate in the beginning a lot on planning out the whole structure of your message so that you could communicate it in a way that the audience can learn. Well, and here's the other thing is it's like you're not only educating your audience as in your book content, but you have to entertain them too, to keep them reading so that they get to the point of your messages. And so I put, there's a part in the program that I lead people through where I put my professor hat on and really teach you how to write compelling, creative nonfiction.
Okay. Now, if somebody came and said, I have so much information to share, but I just don't feel like I'm a good writer, and I think I could communicate it to somebody, but I don't know how to put it on paper. Is that something that they gain experience with through the work that you're doing now and help through that process?
Yeah, you don't have to be a great writer. I mean, most of our clients don't start out that way. But all you have to have is an idea, and literally these tiny little steps that you take in the process of writing your book do a couple of things for you. First of all, it kind of pulls the material out of you. You can't put everything that you know in a book. And so we have to prioritize what's going to be in your book, that it serves a purpose and meets, your audience. But when we get to the writing part, you're actually going to surprise yourself. You're better than you think you are. You just don't know yet how to approach it. And so we take care of that. And so at the end of the whole process, what you come away with is this finished book manuscript. And every writer, great or not, has a really good editor. So there's definitely a step in between writing and publishing that sits kind of right in the middle, and that's the professional edit. So we will professionally edit your book and make it market ready for you. So, but you're going to be better than you're going to actually surprise yourself.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to create that book and go through that process, they can get that professional editing and walk step by step through the process to get to that point where they have a manuscript that's marketable and able to be out there. And I have heard of other programs that are kind of similar to what you're describing, where their primary aspect that they're marketing is, we're going to get you on the bestsellers list. And that's their emphasis and focus. Is that something that you focus on? And if not, why not? Or
you say that and everything in me kind of cringes. The whole thing about an Amazon bestseller list really means nothing. It means nothing. I mean, nothing. And so it's a tactic that some marketers use. And basically what you do is you reduce the price of your book to like $1.99 or even 99 cents. Get as many people in your network to buy the book that day. And they monitor, there's a lot of different categories in Amazon. Monitor that, and maybe it might spike up there for a minute, and then you grab that screenshot. Oh, I'm in the number one in the category. It doesn't mean anything because the next day it's nothing. It's not even, you can't even find it. So I don't advocate for things like that. I mean, and as you probably have seen in your audience too, is that everybody's an Amazon bestseller. And how can that be? So we try to help you identify what the goals are for your book. So for many of our business clients, they want their book to be a representation of them that will draw clients to them or draw people into their business. And so we, help you to position it so that you can meet your market, and find those people when you're finished.
Yeah. So it seems that would be more purposeful rather than just a status symbol that you can put on your book or on your marketing of what you do. And I was a #1 bestseller for a minute.
I hope I didn't offend you, Zach.
No, I was not offended at all. But actually, and personally, I've never published a book, so I haven't been on any list at all. But I know there are others that is their focus on when they are putting themselves out there, and what they do as that's part of their marketing and their narrative is that I was #1 in this. But what you're doing and what you've described sounds like it's more intentional about how you're going to use this for the future, not just for that singular line to be able to say that you did this, but how can you actually use this product for improving your reach, increasing your reach, and to then also be able to create other opportunities to utilize this very high quality material that you're helping people create to be able to continue to expand upon their expertise, or demonstrate that expansion upon their expertise in their field.
Yep, you got it.
Well, I like that process. And, and kind of going back to your original communication and how you got to where you are today, there are points in life where we have some transitional moments where unexpectedly you had something that came up in your family that you needed to go and be there and be present and supportive. And that created this time where you had to step away from your career and the work you were doing and that you were excelling at, and identify, is that something I want to try to get back into, or is this an opportunity? And you chose the latter. Opportunity.
It's really interesting what can happen in your life when you create space for other things. Now, I have to tell you something. Mm-hmm. I never could have quit that job. I was making multiple six figures, and how do you walk away from that? I didn't even like the job. I mean, I really disliked it at times. And so obviously it wasn't really a blessing that my father got ill, but it was a blessing that time could give me some room to reconnect with my parents, #1, and then with myself, and have the opportunity to say, what do I really want to do? How do I really want to be showing up in the world and helping others? And so that was an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, there are probably many people who feel that way about their job, where they're making very good money at what they're doing, don't necessarily like it, but they feel like can't walk away from this. It's too good. And so it isn't always a experience like you had, where it wasn't something desirable to have to make a decision that right now I need to be with my family, being parents who are ill. But there are times where people do have that opportunity to make a choice. And do you ever have the opportunity to speak with people who are experiencing that same thing, where they are kind of transitional in regards to what they're doing or thinking about making changes?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you asked me that, Zach, because a lot of times people will come to us and they have this passion thing that they really have going on. And normally it's people who have had something of a career. So they're not in their, early childbearing years, but they've, maybe be a seasoned professional. And, once your kids are out of college, there's a lot of financial freedom there. That really changes everything. But, a lot of times people will use their book as a segue into maybe chapter 2, I guess I would call it. And I've had several clients do that. But, and something that's really cool about the process is that it really helps you to crystallize your message. We always start off with answering a series of foundational questions that are like, why are you even doing this? What's your motivation? And who specifically is your audience? And how are they going to be changed as a result of taking in your material? And there's 12 of these questions. And we end up distilling those answers down into a purpose statement for the book, which will say, the purpose of this book is to do this particular thing for this specific audience. And by just having that statement, it really helps people who are in maybe a transitional mode or thinking about it. I don't know. I've seen some people move into that as a second chapter, second career. in the past. And so that's kind of cool too. I didn't plan to help people build new businesses, but you can actually do that.
Yeah, and you're helping them create a product through the process, but you're also coaching and mentoring and helping them crystallize the message and put it in a format and to divide it up into parts. So it isn't just about that end product of this book that you created, but it's very, very intentional throughout that time.
Yeah, it is intentional. And it's such a joy too, because, it takes a year to write your book. And I'm sure you and your audience have heard of do it in a weekend or 30 days or something like that. We don't subscribe to that because I don't really know what they're producing in that amount of time, but it takes a year for two reasons. Number one, it's chunked in a way that busy professionals can actually get it done. Now, if I told you that you were going to be writing a book and you had to spend 20 hours a week on it, you would never, that would be the end of that discussion, I'm sure. But so it's chunked in little ways. But here's the other thing that is really important that happens with our authors it's while you're working on your book is working on you, and things are going to come into your experiences and relate to your book. And it's a crazy way that this happens. And what we want the book to do is to have time to become and to breathe. And rather than you like pushing information out on the audience, we want that book to come through you so that it's like a flow that your readers can really benefit from. And it's amazing what happens within people as they're writing their book.
Yeah, that time, that really helps with that process, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, how many books have you helped people get to publication?
It's hundreds, and I don't really keep track of it like that.
Yeah, no, of course.
Sometimes people also ask me, "What's your favorite book?" Well, it's the one I'm working on right now.
For those
lots of authors, yeah.
Yeah, and for those that are viewing this via video, behind you, I see a bunch of what appears to be covers. Is that correct?
Yeah. So every time we issue a new book from Stonebrook Publishing, I reward myself with a metal print of the book cover, and I have, all my office walls are all book covers. So heaven forbid I should ever have to paint. I'd have to take them all down. Anyway, yeah, that's a reminder of that we're actually making a difference in publishing a lot of books.
Absolutely. And you can just start filling in the gaps like, a little by little, so that you'll never have to paint. Their book covers will be that completed work. Well, I want to ask you a question I like to ask all of my guests. Two questions. One, if you are to be approached by someone who's just thinking about getting into business themselves or taking on this entrepreneurial journey in some capacity, what's a big tip that you like to share with somebody, or that you would share with somebody asking that question?
I would say try a lot of things. I mean, when I was starting this business, when I say that you try a lot of things and kind of most of them don't work out, but they're within the framework of what you want to do. And that's how you get channeled in on what does work. And then after a while, you can just do that thing that works. And so don't be afraid to try things. You're going to mess up on a lot of them, or you won't like it, or it won't work out. But that's okay. That's part of the discovery process. Yeah. And do what you love. And when I started this, I didn't think I was going to start a publishing house and then teach all these people to write. I thought, I'm going to go back to school and get more training. And then I did the next thing that came. Oh, would you like to teach for us? And I want to start publishing nonfiction. It doesn't, and you don't get the whole thing at one time, but if you just do the next thing that looks fun, I think you can walk into a new career, actually.
Absolutely. And just starting that process, taking that first step, and then seeing that where that leads, learning what isn't working and what does work, and continue to walk it forward. My second question I like to ask, if you were to be handed $1 million today, no restrictions on that to invest in your business or another endeavor, how would you use that money and why?
You know what, Zach? I would actually use that money to support literacy programs for children. The literacy rate in the U.S. has gone down, and I don't know why, but I've been involved with a couple of different nonprofits who are focused on how to get every child to read. That is that's a key to life, reading and comprehending. And so I would probably use the money that way.
I like that. And that
After I went out to a nice dinner.
Of course. I think that makes sense. Absolutely. But there are so many students and really those teachers and those that are helping try to support the students with literacy, children that need that support. So I really appreciate that answer.
And teachers are strained. They are working with a lot of different things with children. There's, different, learning disabilities and kids on the spectrum. They all learn differently, but everybody can learn to read.
Absolutely. Well, if anybody wants to find out more about you and the work that you're doing now, what's the best way for someone to connect with you?
Well, I love talking to people about their book ideas. So if you go to my website, it's thebookprofessor.com. Okay. There's a link across the top that says schedule a call with Nancy. And we could just chat about what your book ideas are. And that's always a lot of fun for me, and it's free for you. So thebookprofessor.com.
Okay. Thebookprofessor.com. We'll make sure to add that to the show notes. And I absolutely would encourage someone to reach out to Nancy. If you've ever thought about writing a nonfiction book that relates to some type of expertise you have, it may not even be the specific career that you're currently in, but something that is a passion for you. Sometimes it's time to pursue that. And even if it's just an exploratory conversation, that's a great place to start. So absolutely. Well, thank you, Nancy. I really appreciate this time in the conversation, and I love the work you're doing and the impact that you're helping others make while making an impact yourself.
Thanks, Zach.